Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 This morning I'm going to speak on some basic topics. You might think I always speak on basic topics. Actually, there are many other topics that we would like to discuss. But considering that there are many devotees who don't seem to have understood even basic points, it's necessary to speak on them. It's not very meaningful to speak on highly advanced topics to persons who haven't even understood the basics. You know, of course, different devotees are on different levels, and therefore it's probably better, if possible, to have different classes for different devotees on different levels. Recently in South India, we had a gathering like this for 1 week with a few hundred devotees. And someone asked me a question, or a series of questions, about the relative positions of Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. Many of these questions were based on the book of Saraswati Thakur concerning this topic. After about an hour of speaking on this topic, of this quite complex topic, I noticed that many of the devotees, they seemed they couldn't understand what I was talking about. So I stopped speaking on it. Although there are a few devotees who had studied Prabhupada's books very carefully for many years, who are much appreciating the discussion. And then I decided that we should have separate camps, one for most devotees and another for those who are more deeply into understanding the philosophy. There's no harm if devotees who have studied the philosophy deeply and followed the principles carefully hear about basic topics. But as in any system of education, the beginning comes first and there's a gradual progression. So it doesn't seem to be very meaningful to have classes on very complex philosophical topics and very high-level pastimes for devotees who don't even understand the basics. It may even be harmful, because then they think, well, I'm already on, I can understand all this, I'm on the advanced level. Or sometimes it seems that devotees, they have the idea that they just, whatever they're doing, that is bhakti. Whatever I'm doing at any level is good. Whatever I'm doing, Krishna will accept. Even if I don't follow everything properly, well, Krishna's very merciful. He won't mind. And Guru's very merciful. He'll give me his blessings. So there's really no need to follow everything very strictly. We shouldn't be fanatical. So, even if we speak basic topics to supposed to be devotees who have such attitudes, we may speak basic topics to devotees or supposed to be devotees that have such attitudes. But such supposed to be devotees won't understand, or they won't accept it, or they'll think, well, it's not for me. And they'll prefer to hear a speaker who's reputed to speak very nice, pleasing things that we like to hear. And they feel that, well, by hearing this, I feel so much inspiration in bhakti, but then they don't even follow basic things. So what is the meaning of that inspiration in bhakti? It's meaningless. It's just some mundane sentiment, actually. So bhakti is it's not some automatic thing that you just mumble a few rounds now and then you're a devotee. Anyway, basic topics I had in mind. There are a couple of basic topics I wanted to discuss. One is illicit sex, misunderstandings and regarding. I prefer not to talk about this, but it seems from the misunderstandings that no one's talking about it, or if they are, they're not talking about it enough or clearly enough. Or maybe they're saying the wrong thing. It's better if senior Grihastha devotees counsel others on this, or senior brahmacharis also can counsel brahmacharis about this. But if those who are supposed to be counseling others to do the right thing themselves do the wrong thing, then it becomes a very difficult situation. Devotees can't understand what the right thing is. So illicit sex means sex outside marriage and sex within marriage that is not meant for procreation. Now it is possible on the basis of one letter of Srila Prabhupada to make the standard a little less. That illicit sex, that sex within marriage is okay, and if children happen to be born, then you don't abort. If children happen to be conceived, then you don't abort them. You have them and look after them. This is very different from the culture of the widespread culture of the modern world, in which sex before marriage is normal. Even after marrying, to have sex with someone else apart from your spouse is quite normal. And not to ever marry, but to have different sexual partners is also quite acceptable. Sexual partners.
Before or after?
Not to marry at all, never marry, and just like dogs, they don't marry, but they just have different partners. And when boys and girls come to puberty, they feel attraction to each other, and then they mix up. So devotees, they have to follow the Vaishnava system. No boyfriends and girlfriends. It might seem normal if you're at school or in college or working. There's some nice boy or nice girl and you feel attraction and you mix up with them. And this is not for Vaishnavas. Ideally, marriages should be arranged by the parents of the devotee, or if the parents are not Vaishnavas, by senior Vaishnavas. Unfortunately, these systems are not very well in place. And even after becoming devotees, the persons often retain the culture or lack of culture which they had prior to coming to devotional service. So that even if their parents are devotees, they'll tell their parents, don't interfere. It's my own personal affair. I'll find out whoever I want to marry. With this strange idea of love, I will find the person I love. Funnily enough, we don't find young men falling in love with old women, or young women, sometimes young women falling in love with some ugly old man. Which just goes to show that what they call love is lust. Why is it that more men fall in love with beautiful young women than with ugly young women? It's bodily attraction on that. It causes unlimited problems. Unlimited. Both in this life and in future lives. So I could say much more about this, but I trust that those who are somewhat intelligent will get the point. Those who don't will have to suffer, that's all. Now, another basic point I want to speak about is about deity worship. In deity worship should be taken up only with the permission of one's guru. It's very common that someone comes and says, "Here, take these deities. I can't look after them now, so you look after them." In most cases in the modern world, this is an offense. Because if one accepts deities for personal worship, he should do so throughout life. Unless one is sick, severely sick or disabled or in old age and incapable, if one takes up deity worship, one should do so throughout life. But if you just think, well, I can't be bothered anymore, I'm too busy, or then and you give away to someone else, that's not. And then someone else thinks, oh, this is Krishna's Leela. Krishna is coming to me. I must be on the level of Madhavendra Puri, that Krishna has appeared to me. But it's just the offense on the part of the person who took the deities and then doesn't want to worship them. So better you don't get involved in that offense. Now, in accepting deity worship, one should, as I said, one should take permission of one's guru. It's not proper to get a deity and then go to the guru and ask for permission and kind of twist his arm. You know that saying, kind of force him. Now you have to give me permission. If you don't give me permission, then you're offensive to Krishna. Yes. And if you're offensive to Krishna, then I won't follow you as guru, and I'll worship him anyway, because you're not qualified to be my guru. See, I have my direct relationship with Krishna, and who are you to get in the way? Now, other considerations are that, people do get sick, and they do get old, and they do die, if you hadn't noticed. And deity worship has to go on. It's if you happen to be sick, then what happens to deity worship if you're confined to bed? And what will happen to the deities when you die? So unless you're in a family and your children are devotees, then it's probably better not to start deity worship. Otherwise you'll be in a difficult situation again. There is consideration of offense in deity worship. You may say, well, Gonitai don't take offense. So we'll just treat them like garbage. But that attitude itself is offensive. We find in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela that when Nityananda was offended by Jagai and Madhai, he didn't take offense, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became upset. So all these points have to be considered very carefully. I generally recommend my disciples to worship the Lord in picture form. And you can also worship Tulasi, because even if you're sick, you can at least put some water on Tulasi or have someone else do that. But if you're sick, you can't cook for the deities, you can't dress them, you can't bathe them, then that constitutes an offense on your part for having failed to do so. So many points of training are required. The culture that was there for generations in Indian Vaishnava families never existed here in Russia. So it is a great endeavor to try to establish this culture. We should understand what is the proper thing to do and do that. One thing Srila Prabhupada said before his passing away is that he said, I'm very afraid that the standard of deity worship will decrease after my passing. I'm paraphrasing here. But actually we see that has happened in many cases. And thus we see that it has become accepted as normal in ISKCON temples, in many ISKCON temples, that persons without Brahminical initiation, or even without any initiation, perform deity worship. So this is a very grave situation. Just one more point I'll make this morning, unless there are questions. That I'm able to train devotees to some extent through some of my disciples in India, where we have a center which is good for training devotees. So I recommend young men who are not married to go and take training there. Arrangements can also be made for grihastas. So, if you're prepared to accept that training, you will definitely benefit from it, as devotees who have undergone that can testify to. So young men who want to know more about that, I urge you to take that up. Take 1 year out of your life for that. That will help you throughout your life. Before you enter the Grihastha ashram, maybe you don't want to marry all your life, that's also possible. Alright, I'll finish there. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Questions? Yeah, I saw Smita Krishna's hand first. I think you have to repeat the question. I don't think everyone heard it. Repeat it in Russian.
She opened the book and immediately saw a statement by Srila Prabhupada about illicit sex. So then she said that she thought it may be good, but said, but we actually, that is the expression of our feelings. So how we can resist in this regard? What to say to such people?
Tell them to read the Bhagavad Gita, in which one of the main topics is controlling the senses and the need to do so. What is that? Indriya Ramo Mogham Partha Sajivati. Krishna says one who lives for the pleasure of the senses lives mogha, uselessly. How would you translate that? Uselessly, in illusion. Now you can tell them that you may express your feeling, but you should know that every action has a reaction. Just because it feels good to you doesn't mean that it is good. You express your feelings by having sex, but the natural result of that is children. Now what do you think? Women, they just get passed around like, in the tribes they pass around the pipe, they're smoking, and there's one person smokes and someone else smokes. They get passed around like this. Is that very honorable? Is that very good? Maybe they'll say, yes, it is good. There are so many things you can say. By reading the books, you should know what to say. Kamasya nendriya priti labho jiveta yavata jivasya tatvidigyasa neho yas cheha karmapi. Life should not be lived just for gratifying the senses. You say expressing your feelings as if it's some very high emotion. The dog is doing the same thing.
No.
So one should live for the sake of inquiring into the truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Actually, this idea of expressing your feelings is just something to exploit women. Well, I didn't say the word prostitute, but you did.
I didn't say.
You didn't either. I heard. Sounded to me like that. Okay. A man goes to a woman and says to her, let's express our feelings together. And the woman thinks, yes, how wonderful. And then the woman says, now I'm pregnant. And the man is gone. So women, they make themselves available to men, thinking that they'll get the man's love and protection. Yeah, speak a little strongly. I can't even hear from here. And men take advantage of this to exploit women. Therefore, we should discuss these things in our classes. Unless these things are discussed, everything becomes meaningless. We're talking about this Leela of Krishna, that Leela of Krishna, and then we go outside and have illicit sex. It's meaningless. Yeah, what was your question?
About deity worship, in which direct mode of worship should we have?
Yeah, say it in Russian. The mood is the same as in every facet of devotional service. The mood in deity worship is, I am the servant of Krishna, I should serve him.
If I feel or not feel, I must do as a duty.
Say it in Russian. Well, if we have no desire to perform deity worship, it's probably better that we don't do it in the first place. One should be very firmly fixed in the understanding that I am a servant of Krishna before he takes on deity worship. Otherwise, what happens is you do in the beginning and you have some sentiment, but after some time you think, I don't feel like it anymore, and then you throw away the deities, or give them away to someone else, because you don't feel like it anymore. So if you don't feel like it, don't start it in the first place. Harinam is the prescribed method for worshipping Krishna in this age. However, even if you don't float into trances of ecstasy when worshipping the deity, if one serves faithfully, then because it's the natural propensity of the soul to serve Krishna and to love Krishna, then by serving Krishna, then feelings for Krishna will naturally arise. Did you get all that? Therefore we have the process of sadhana bhakti. It's understood that in the beginning the feelings are not very developed. But by following the rules and regulations, that the feelings will develop. And in the neophyte stage, which includes probably all of us here, if we put feelings, if we think that our feelings is the criterion and not following what's given by the Shastra and the Acharyas, then that's simply cheating. If we measure everything by our feelings, that's simply a transformation of sense gratification. My feelings, my feelings, my feelings. And one day we think, well, I don't have that much feeling for Krishna, but I have a lot of feeling for my next door neighbor's wife. And then we fall down the deep dark hole of another man's wife. Did everyone hear what you're saying? These things are going on. So don't judge everything by your feeling. Follow the process of devotional service. Yes, we should do it as a duty, understanding that we are servants of Krishna. Unless we're fixed in the understanding that we're servants of Krishna, we will remain servants of our senses. But if we accept that we're servants of Krishna, then we should try to serve him. Because the nature of service to Krishna is that it is full of loving feelings, then naturally, as we stop serving our senses and start serving Krishna, those loving feelings will arise. This idea of putting so much emphasis on your feelings comes from the modern demoniac psychology. This rascal Freud, he had this idea that you should just indulge your feelings and not suppress anything. Which just means to be a chimpanzee, actually. Because human life is meant for sense control. The chimpanzee has no idea of sense control. So, my feelings. What is my duty? That consideration comes first. This idea, you see, I'm married for 20 years, I have 3 children, but I don't really feel that much for them. So, time to find a nice new young wife, and I have a lot of feelings for her. In modern society, that's considered, oh yes, you have to follow your feelings and be natural. So the same thing, we take deities, and then for some time it's like a toy. Like children, they get a toy, and for some time they play with it, and then they throw it away. And you take Krishna, you play with him like a toy, and after some time you say, get to hell. I don't like you anymore. Yeah, someone else had a question? Yeah.
In Bhagavad Gita, that is stated that sex should be only for the begotten of children, but...
Not exactly, not directly. In Bhagavad Gita it's stated, what is the statement? Who can say? Dharma viruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshava. I am that sex which is not contrary to religious principles, which is not just for producing children. There are many other considerations also. That has to be within marriage. The marriage should be according to religious principles. There are so many considerations. It was a precursor to the question. Yeah, but he made a statement which wasn't exactly correct, so I corrected it. Okay, go on. So ask it in Russian. Contraceptive sex is, of course, sinful. Sometimes, supposed to be devotees are having contraceptive sex, they make some mistake and then they make up for the mistake by having an abortion. It happens. He's so pure, he doesn't even know the word. Well, it's not very funny. Sannyasis get to hear about all these things. So if grihastas are trying to have children, that's good, they should have children. And any activity which is engaged in simply for sense gratification with no purpose to serve Krishna, obviously that's outside the scope of devotional service. At the same time, I don't see that Prabhupada, he made he didn't send detectives to check up on what his grihastas, disciples were doing. Probably many of our grihastas are not following that standard. I'm not going to make an investigation to find out. Yeah, okay, so shall we finish? Anything else? Yeah, say it in the mic so the sound will be picked up.
You said in one lecture that somebody may do hearing and chanting for millions of lives if he may not obtain the goal if he will not come up to the standard of Atma Nivedana.
Yeah.
And is in this process of method of Atma Nivedana itself, there are some specific subtle things which are also important to know.
That's the question.
Yes.
Are there things to know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So say it in Russian again in the mic. Yeah, there are many things. And that's another whole seminar. The seminar is called Our Whole Life. Basically, a devotee should be very sincere, not trying to cheat Krishna or others or ourselves. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your patience. Books, books, books. If you are a grihasta and you don't have a full set of Prabhupada's books yet, despite having been urged to do so repeatedly, raise your hand and let us know if you don't have a set, and we'll do the needful. Now they're afraid. Or maybe they all got a set of books. What's that you said? Oh, is it? Okay, very good. If you have a full set of Bhagavatam, there's also Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sciences, many small books. Full set means complete. You could also take my books if you like. Hare Krishna. Okay, ladies, please come.
Bhakti Vaishnava Maharaj.